see all of you during this lunchtime and being gracious and generous with your time on this day after the State of the Union. And we are kicking off our very first new Capitol Dialogue series here. I'm Roswell Encina. I'm the president and CEO of the United States Capitol Historical Society. It is truly an honor to welcome all of you here today. The Capitol is more than just a building. It is a symbol. It is where our nation comes together in moments of challenge, in moments of progress, and in moments of hope. It represents the ideals of democracy, the peaceful exchange of ideas, and the ongoing work of forming a more perfect union. Here at the Capitol Historical Society, our mission is to preserve and share that story. We work to ensure that people across the country understand the history of Congress, the significance of the Capitol, and the importance of civic participation. Just as important, we want every American to see themselves in this institution, that the Capitol belongs to us. It is our story. It is our shared history. This work feels especially meaningful as we approach America's 250th anniversary this year. America 250 is not just a celebration of our founding, it is an opportunity to reflect on the generations who have shaped our democracy, to preserve their stories, and to inspire the next generation to see themselves as part of our nation's civic life. Programs like Capitol Dialogues are part of that effort. They help connect the past to the present and remind us that civics is not abstract, it is lived. It is human, and it remains essential to the strength of our democracy. We could not ask for a more fitting inaugural guest than Congressman Jim Clyburn. Congressman Clyburn has represented South Carolina's 6th congressional district since 1993 and has served in some of the most senior leadership roles in the House of Representatives, including Majority Whip, where he became the first African American to serve multiple terms in that position. His life story, from his early days as a teacher in South Carolina to becoming one of the most respected voices in Congress, reflects a lifelong commitment to public service and to expanding the promise of American democracy. He has also been a champion for preserving history, including protecting historic sites connected to the Reconstruction era and historically Black colleges and universities, ensuring that these stories are remembered and understood. His work reminds us that preserving history and strengthening civic and understanding go hand in hand. We also are very fortunate to have today's conversation guided by someone who knows him very well, Ashley Palmer. Ashley previously served on Congressman Clyburn's staff and now serves as a valued member of the Society's Board of Trustees. She brings both professional insight and deep appreciation for the importance of public service and civic engagement. Ashley, thank you so much for your leadership and commitment to the Society and Congressman Clyburn. Thank you for being here and for your extraordinary service to our nation and for helping us launch Capitol Dialogues at this important moment as we prepare to commemorate America 250. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Jim Clyburn and Ashley Palmer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hopefully my voice can carry like yours. You don't have the mic.
Really not like mine.
Congressman Clyburn, your life and career sit at the intersection of history and lived experience, shaped by the civil rights movement, grounded in faith, and informed by a deep understanding of those who came before you. As we observe Black History Month and approach America's 250th anniversary, it feels especially fitting to reflect not only on your journey, but on the longer arc of representation and democracy that your story represents. Let's start with your early life. You were born in Sumter, South Carolina, to parents deeply engaged in ministry and civic life. How did your upbringing shape your sense of purpose?
Well, first of all, thanks to the Historical Society for allowing me to be part of launching this series, and thank you, Ashley. Our relationship did not start with her becoming a part of my staff. I've known Ashley since she was a little girl down in Charleston. Her mother, her family has been great friends of mine over the years. Though I was born and raised in Sumter, I went to Charleston right out of college, and I often joke that I was born and raised in Sumter. I finished high school in Camden, went to college in Orangeburg, went to Charleston to start my political career, and on my way down, I stopped off in Moncks Corner and picked up a wife. And so I've been connected to South Carolina in that way. And all of that really helped to shape who and what I am. My father was a fundamentalist minister who, though I did not know this until I guess it was it may have been 6 months before he died. My dad grew up in Kershaw County, South Carolina. And when he was growing up, the state of South Carolina did not provide education for blacks beyond the 7th grade in that county. So he was not allowed to get a high school education. He then repeated the 7th grade 3 years, and until the teachers told him that he was too far advanced, wouldn't let him come back. He then went and got a job in a bakery shop and self-studied and got to the point that he could pass a college entrance exam. And my mother got married, moved to Sumter because he had been called to the pastorate of 3 different churches, one of which was a church in Sumter. They decided to go to Sumter because Morris College was there, and both of them wanted to get a college education. And my dad was so conscious of all of this. When we were growing up, he had 2 of the rules he had. One, every morning before lifting the fork at breakfast, we had to recite a Bible verse. Never told us to read the Bible, just told us you got to recite a Bible verse every morning, and you cannot say the same one twice. And on the day he put down the rule, he took Jesus' whip off the table. So we had to do a little more research than that 2-word verse. But every evening before retiring to bed, the rule after homework, we had to share with him a current event. We didn't have television, but the newspapers, the Sumter Daily Island was delivered to our home every afternoon. And my 2 brothers and I scrambled every afternoon to get a current event to share with him. That was the rule. I grew up with that. And so when people ask me what got me involved in politics, my dad. I was reading those newspapers when Harry Truman ran for president, and I started following this little guy from Missouri, handicapped, was not college educated, and he's running for president against this great Spingarn from New York, pretty wealthy guy, Tom Dewey. And here's little Harry, and he wins that race. And I just got enmeshed in that. How could this guy win? Nobody thought he was going to win. And so all that kind of shaped me. Now, my mom's was a beautician, and she became a big fundraiser for the NAACP because it was during this time that I was growing up. If you remember, I was born in 1940. I'm getting ready to celebrate the 47th anniversary of my 39th birthday. So I was growing up when things were beginning to happen, challenging segregation in the South. And so Briggs v. Elliott, the first case that became one of the 5 cases of Brown v. Board of Education, started in the little town of Somerton, just 20 miles away. I knew those families, Reverend J. A. Delane, who organized them. My father knew them. And my mother, in a beauty shop, started raising money for the NAACP. And then the state of South Carolina, all the southern states, all took up arms against the NAACP, and they were attempting to break the backs of those institutions, challenging them, and they went around the state filing lawsuits. And so that's how I really got involved because one of the first lawsuits was an attorney named Nash was suing the NAACP. Their thing was, let's break them. We will drive them into poverty, and that'll stop this foolishness. So my mom's was raising money to make sure they didn't break them. And then, and of course, this big case, Shep Nash against the NAACP of Sumter, South Carolina. I got elected president of the Youth Council when I was 12 years old. And so I've just been involved in this, and my parents were involved. My mother, more the activist than my dad, but all of this shaped me. It was the church, the beauty shop, all this stuff you hear today about barbershop politics. Come on, I grew up in beauty shop politics. What's the difference? I just grew up in this stuff, and it shaped me. And so when I went away to college, I was there on that campus in 1960 when those students sat in up in Greensboro, North Carolina. They went first on February 1. We were scheduled to go on February 15th. I was one of 7 students, 4 from South Carolina State, 3 from Claflin that organized the sit-ins in South Carolina. And that was just it. My mother wanted me to go north to school, which was the thing back then. And so she made it very clear to me. And of course, we talked about schools that I would apply to. And of course, I had my instructions from her. And so several weeks later, she asked me, what schools have you been accepted to? I told her only one accepted me. She was a little bit concerned about that. And I said, South Carolina State is the only one that accepted me. It was a long time after that. I might have been ready to graduate college when I finally admitted to her I never applied to any other school but South Carolina. Grew up, that's where I wanted to go to school. I knew what I wanted to do in life, and I figured I could do it in South Carolina State. No, I was going to do it in South Carolina because I had been talked into staying in South Carolina by a high school teacher who told me that she thought that if all of us who got educated had left, the state would never change. So, and that teacher happened to have been a white teacher who said that to me. And she shamed me into committing myself to staying in South Carolina. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, that's what made me who and what I am. My dad made me a pretty prolific reader and writer. He would, every weekend around 6 o'clock on Friday, my dad would take his last meal for the week. And he'd spend all day Saturday reading, writing, preparing for his sermons on Sunday, and would not eat another meal until after church on Sunday. That was weekly with him. So I grew up thinking, reading, and writing. My dad just said all the time, son, he who does not read is no better off than he who cannot read. And that was drilled into us. So reading and writing is what it's all been all about with me. And that's why my second book, if I decide to bring it here. This book's my third book. Now, I mentioned those people in Briggs v. Elliott. This little tabletop book is what I wrote about the folks in Briggs v. Elliott, and it's called Uncommon Courage. So this thing about me writing the book is nothing new. This is my second book. It's my memoir, and I call it Blessed Experiences. It's a take on my dad's favorite hymn, Blessed Assurance. In fact, he, when he was reading and writing on Saturdays, he would always be humming the book or the song, Blessed Assurance. The first 8, of course, that came about because of all of the study. My dad thought that the greatest man who ever lived was Robert Smalls. And I've learned to agree with him on that. And I say in this book that Robert Smalls is the most consequential South Carolinian who ever lived. Now, there are some South Carolinians who would disagree with me on that, and that's all right. But if we want to debate that, I'm going to win that debate. Because if you want to say it's John C. Calhoun, I can show you how limited he was and how limited his influence. Though John C. Calhoun got to be vice president of the United States, everything that he wanted to be, he cannot measure up to Robert Smalls. The consequences that flowed from his life has had a greater impact on this country than any other South Carolinian, bar none. My mother thought Mary McLeod Bethune was the greatest person who ever lived. So I grew up, Robert Smalls on one side, Mary McLeod Bethune on the other, who happened to have been from Sumter. She grew up in little Maysville, 8 miles away, and she organized the National Council of Negro Women. It was founded by her, and she did that by organizing beauticians. That's how she got started organizing. And my mother was a beautician, and she thought Mary McLeod Bethune and Madam C.J. Walker were just great people. Her goal was for me to gather stuff from Mary McLeod Bethune. She worked on gathering stuff from Madam C.J. Walker, who happened to have become the first Black woman millionaire in the United States. So she got that as a beautician. My mother thought she could do the same thing. And I think she probably would have, but for multiple myeloma, which took her life at the age of 55.
Congressman, before we jump into the first 8, I want folks to hear that don't know you as well, but you were a teacher, civil rights organization, organizer, and administrator, commissioner, before coming to Congress. When did public service move from a calling to commitment for you?
It was always there. There was no light went off, no incident developed. It was just always there. I was taught that. My dad had the Bible, the hymnal, and the third book that he kept in his pulpit. That third book is the book that he developed. And that was a book that contained all the registered voters in our precinct. And my brothers and I, it was our job on election day to knock on those doors to make sure that those people showed up to vote. So I grew up in this, never, no light ever went off. Now, there was one incident that had a dramatic influence on me. I'll tell you about the case of Shep Nash suing the NAACP. Well, when that trial was held, my mother was going to the courthouse every day to witness that trial. And one day she came home during the lunch break and told me she wanted me to get in the car. She was going to take me down to the courtroom that afternoon because she was watching Matthew J. Perry, who was the NAACP's attorney, arguing that case on behalf of the Sumter branch of the NAACP. And Matthew was so eloquent in that courtroom. The word got out about this Black lawyer who was making mincemeat out of these guys in the courtroom. And people started crowding into that courtroom from all over. And my mother took me with her. And she said this to me. She says, I want you to see what you can be when you grow up. She wanted me to see Matthew Perry in that courtroom. And it must have had some impact. It turned out when I got to college, got arrested, Matthew Perry became my lawyer. And I repaid him because the very first bill I introduced when I got to Congress was to name a new courthouse that was going to be built in Columbia, South Carolina, the Matthew J. Perry United States Courthouse. That courthouse stands today. And it was not only my first piece of legislation I introduced. In my class, I think the 103rd Congress, only 2 freshmen got bills passed in that year, and I was one of them, and it was this bill. And the interesting thing about this bill is I got it through the committee, and I did some interesting things to get it through the committee. And when the bill passed the House, got to the Senate, Strom Thurmond put a hold on the bill because he wanted that courthouse named after him. He was a lot like a fella I know today. He wanted everything. If you go to South Carolina today, Strom Thurmond's name is on so much stuff in South Carolina you wouldn't believe. Roads and rivers and branches. His name is everywhere. And he wanted his name on this courthouse. And I wanted Matthew Perry's name on the courthouse. When he put the hold on the bill, I was sitting in my office one day, and an attorney who had been in Congress, a former congressman, who had the same seat that I now hold, I'm black, and his name now, Yebby helped me. The congressman who, I don't know why I'm black on his name, it'll come to me.
Who was it?
No, the congressman who I sent to Strom Thurmond. When Strom Thurmond put the hold on this bill, John DePere.
Oh.
You're in your pay today.
Yeah, good job.
So John DePere had been in Congress in the same seat that I've got. And he is now, he had been defeated by Talon. And then I replaced Talon, who decided not to run again. So DePere comes to see me on behalf of a client. And he told me what he wanted. And I told him, I said, I'll be glad to help you with that. And then when he got up, he made a big mistake, because I wasn't even thinking about this. He got up, and before leaving, he says, now, is there anything I can do for you? And this light went off. I said, yes, there is one thing you can do for me. He said, what is it? I said, well, so you know Matthew Perry. He said, yeah, I think he's a great person. He just talked, I mean, everybody thought Matthew Perry was just one of the greatest people around. And he just was lavish. And he says, I said, I'm thinking about having a building named for Matthew Perry. That's a great idea. He just went through why he thought it was great. I said, well, there's a little problem. I says, you used to work for Strom Thurmond? He said, yeah. I said, Strom Thurmond has got a hold on my bill. And he got silent. So I told him, I said, but look, I've done some research, and there's a federal building in Columbia named for Strom Thurmond. And I found out that building was not named by Congress. The bill was introduced twice to name the building for Strom Thurmond, and the bill never passed. So Strom got the GSA administrator with it by administrative fiat, named that building for Strom. And so I told him that Strom is objecting to my courthouse bill. And if he does not remove his objection, I'm going to introduce legislation to rename the Strom Thurmond building. I says, now it won't pass the Senate, but it'll pass the House. And if he wants that embarrassment, he needs to remove his hold from my bill. So Perry says, man, you wouldn't do that.
Trust me.
Just watch me. Well, this was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I jumped on the plane. I was going to Charleston for a banquet that night. When I got into the banquet hall, as soon as I walked in the door, it says, there's a phone call that you need to make before you go to into the banquet. And it was John Napier. He had already been to Strom Thurmond, and it's a pretty long story, but Strom Thurmond removed his objection. And so Matthew Perry, United States Congress.
That's great. It's good to have some insight how things work in this place. But so now that we started talking about you arriving in the early 90s, you were stepping into a history both extraordinary and interrupted. What did it mean to follow in the footsteps of our first African-American member, Joseph Rainey, who was elected to the House?
Well, the interesting thing about this, Joseph Rainey was from Georgetown, South Carolina. And he was sworn into Congress on December 12th, 1870. I knew of Joseph Rainey because I knew of the people in this book. Robert Smalls, of course, is my favorite, most everybody's favorite. So when I got here, I started looking around. It's not unusual. I was on the governor's staff in South Carolina, and I was the first African American to hold such a position. And one day, John West came into my office and he said, well, Jim Clyburn, I had never been called Jim. I had never, my wife never knew my first name. She always called me Clyburn. And most people, it was James. My daddy was James. I'd never been called Jim until John West started that. And it was Jim Clyburn as the one word. And so he said, Jim Clyburn, how's everything going? I said, Governor, everything's going fine, except that it's a bit lonely in this place. He said, lonely? All these people? And I said, no. I said, no. When I walk through this building and I see all of these portraits and statues, and I don't see anything that looks like me. It's a lonely feeling. I mean, I've been doing stuff like this all my life. And I said that to him. And John West had a habit, even if he was sitting down or standing up, anytime something was challenging to him, he would always put his fingers right on his nose. And he did that and looked at me with this strange look. He didn't say anymore. A couple of days later, he came to me. He says, look, I've been thinking about your feeling of loneliness. And maybe we will see what we can do about getting a portrait of an African American in the State House. And so he says, I'm going to appoint a committee to look into it and make a recommendation as to who we should honor. Well, he did. And he told the committee to come back with 3 choices. And they did. So then he called me into his office and he says, look, I got the report from the committee. And he gave me the 3 names. He says, I'm going to let you select which one it should be. So I looked at the 3 names. And I can say this now because I remember one of the 3 was in one of the guys in this book. It wasn't Robert Smalls, but one of them. And I said, neither one. What do you mean, neither one? I think it's a bit insulting for us to put a portrait with one of these 3 people when you got people much more in tune with the Black psyche And he said, like who? And I said, Mayor McLeod Bethune. It's okay. So he got one of his buddies to introduce the legislation to name, to put a portrait of Mayor McLeod Bethune in, and all hell broke loose. I mean, people went crazy. Uh, as you know, the same thing with Martin Luther King Jr. She was a communist. She was this. She was that. That same woman who has become the first person of color to have her statue here in Statuary Hall. She was a communist. I mean, there was one guy from Spartanburg. He made a career, made his career arguing against Mary McLeod Bethune. It was a great lesson for me. So in the middle of all of that, it was selling every newspaper, every leading on the news every night. So I went in to the governor's office one day and I says, Governor, I came to apologize. I said, apologize for what? I says, for getting you into this difficulty. I says, I had no idea this thing would get this nasty. He says, I don't consider this to be all that bad. We'll get this done. And we did. And so Mary McLeod Bethune's portrait went up in the State House in Columbia. And it was the same kind of feeling I had when I got here. And I went through this building, and that Capitol building, and never saw any indication that Joseph Rennie had ever been in the place. And so I set out to remedy that. So that portrait you see now, Joseph Rennie on the first floor of the Capitol, right next door to room 150, was yours truly. But as I usually do, I didn't hold a press conference to do it. I did what I thought needed to be done to get it done, and it got done. And a lot of people take credit for it, but you're looking at the guy who did it.
I had a Robert Smalls question, but that is all of our favorites. I'm going to skip him though, because I think folks know more about him than the others. Richard H. Kane was one that I actually didn't know about. I knew that he was there, but I didn't know his story. He represented both triumph and backlash in American democracy. What lessons from his life resonates with you most deeply?
It's interesting. He was the one on the list that I did mention earlier. I never thought this first time I ever admitted to it was because I'm an AME, and Richard King was an AME. Richard King was born in what is now West Virginia. It was Virginia at the time. As many of you know, Virginia split over the question of slavery. And the people of West Virginia were anti-slavery. You wouldn't know it, but they kind of stood down. But they were anti-slavery in Virginia. Slavery. So King was born there. His father was African American. His mother was Native American. They moved to Ohio when he was a youngster, and he went to Wilberforce University. He felt a calling to the ministry at the age of 19, and he went to a seminary in Missouri. No, in Iowa. He went to a seminary in Iowa, and from there, while at Wilberforce, the Civil War broke out, and he tried to volunteer for the war. A bunch of students from Wilberforce wanted to fight in that war for their freedoms. And of course, there was a law against blacks serving in the Civil War, and they were not allowed. When he left Wilberforce, he converted to the AME. He was United Methodist before. He upset with the United Methodist Church. It had a racial anarchy in it. And so he converted to the AME Church, which was found as African Methodist Episcopal. He was then sent to New York to pastor Bridge Street AME Church. It still exists today. It's in its third location now, but Bridge Street, when I had a book event up there, all these people came to it. Members of that church came to it. Well, after the Civil War, the AME Church sent Richard Kane to Charleston to rebuild Emmanuel AME Church. Same church that came into the country's focus when those 9 souls were murdered in that church. That church has always been symbolic of the anti-slavery movement. In fact, that church was burned down more than once by white folks there. One of the times was after Denmark Vesey's 1822 insurrection. The Citadel was first built. They dressed it up a lot of other ways, but it was built right at the back door of Emmanuel Church for the express purpose. This is an oscillator to keep watch over Black worshipers. If you go down there today, the Embassy Suites in Charleston, those the original Citadel. And that's why it's shaped the way it's shaped. It looks like an arsenal. Mm-hmm. So anyway, Kane, when he went to Charleston, he became an extremely popular guy. And had over 6,000 members of the church. The church got so big, he built a second church, Morris Brown, which is my home church. And he named, Morris Brown had been the pastor of Emmanuel before he was run out of town by Ku Klux Klan and others. And went to Philadelphia and became the second bishop of the AME Church. So he named that church for him. But Kane then established a newspaper. That newspaper still exists today in Nashville. The Recorder, the AME, Church Recorder, it was established by Richard Kane. With Paul Quinn, in Texas, was established by Richard Kane. He became the 14th AME bishop and the 4th African-American that served in Congress from South Carolina. And of course, he served 2 terms. They were not contiguous. And of course, when stuff went bad, he went to Texas. And from Texas, he came here to Washington, D.C. I'm still trying to find out where he's buried, but he died as an AME bishop here in Washington, D.C. Richard Kane, anybody here from South Carolina?
A lot. There's a lot.
Well, you've been to Charleston. Many of you have been to the little town of Somerville. You may miss this town, but a part of what you think is Somerville is Lincolnville. A little town of Lincolnville was found by Richard Kane. And he was found in order to establish affordable housing for the formerly enslaved. So the town was built on that. And Richard Kane, I think, I'm not, well, I was limited for what kind of words, how many words I could, but I should have done a better job with him in this book. Because I think, Robert Smalls is who he is, Thomas Miller, for certain, Joseph Rainey, because he was first. But when it comes to the consequences of one's life, Richard came, I should have given them more treatment than I did in the book.
Next book. Next book.
Mhm.
All right. You recently met with students at Sacramento State and Stanford to discuss Reconstruction era leadership.
Right.
What struck you most about the way this generation engages with that history?
It's interesting. I had a breakfast this morning and I had the occasion to talk about my trip last week to Sacramento State and Stanford. And I was incredibly moved by those students. At Sacramento State, I don't know what I expected, but they had this meeting in a church there where I think graduation, the church is really connected to the school in some kind of way. And the students were everywhere and they were very anxious. The entire basketball team came in and occupied a section that athletes, I mean, and they were asking questions. They were really involved. In fact, I got a little bit carried away because Shaq's son is on their basketball team. And he's not quite as tall as Shaq, but I understand he's a pretty good basketball player. And I chatted with him afterwards. And, you know, I don't know what I expected, but I did not expect the students to be as into it. They are absolutely concerned about what's going to be, what this country's going to be when they walk out of those universities. I got the same thing. They were more of an adult crowd at Stanford, but at Sacramento State, it was more students and young people. And they were, I came away really feeling much better about where we are, about what the future is going to be like than it was before I went out there. This is happening a lot of places. I go home Friday. I think it's Friday night. I'm going to be at Allen University. I'll be at Morris College Friday at noon. And South Carolina State, Claflin. Oh, everybody's saying, I got to just go a lot of places. I was hoping we all get this done before July 21st, because I don't think I can function at 86 the way I now function at 85. So I'm going to get all this done for my next birthday.
Good. Okay, so on that note, when future generations look back at this period that we're in now in our American history, what do you hope they say about how we met that moment?
Well, I hope they say a whole lot more positive things than we can say about our 100th anniversary. I don't know if you've ever focused on this, but the birth date, birth year of the country and the date there about it. Of course, there's some debate, and us, his people who are particular about things, is it July 4th or is it July 5th? You find some debate about which date it really is. But for all intents and purposes, July 4th, 1776. What was going on in this country on July 4th, 1876, during the 100th year? So 2 months after the end of Reconstruction. Reconstruction came to an end because of the election of 1876. And Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden, the election was thrown into the House of Representatives. When that election got thrown into the House of Representatives, the House couldn't figure out what to do. So the House appointed a 15-person commission to study the issue, meet with the candidates, and recommend to the House how to resolve the issue. That 15-member commission voted 8-7 to award the disputed 20 votes coming from Florida Louisiana, and South Carolina. Those 20 electoral votes, they awarded them to Hayes. Hayes had 165. The matching number was 185. Samuel Tilden had 184. He missed by 1 vote being president. And when that happened, Hayes gets the 20 votes. He goes from 165 to 185, and he becomes president of the United States by 1 vote. And he, as promised to these folks, a lot of people call it the Tilden-Hayes compromise. No such thing. If there's any misnomer in history, that's one. There was no compromise between Hayes and Tilden. This deal was done by this 15-member committee. And so I never called it that. Hayes became president of the United States as a result of the 1876 election. That's when we were celebrating the 100th anniversary, if I could. So our first century was enmeshed in extreme controversy, and the democracy took on what we now know as Jim Crow. I just hope the 250th anniversary. Now, I subscribe to the notion that most people do, that history repeats itself. And I do believe that. But I also believe that just because the events repeat doesn't mean the results have to be the same. I'm sure hopeful that as we celebrate our 250th birthday, the results won't be what they were as we were celebrating the 100th birthday of the country.
All right, my last question, I'm going to end it on a lighter note before we get a few questions from the audience. And thank you for helping me out with my question. You you developed something of a following for your now iconic quarter zip sweaters. Did you ever imagine your wardrobe would become part of your public brand?
No, no, but you know, what's so funny about that? A few weeks or maybe months before, Wes Moore started to make himself something that he ain't. I have been hearing a few staffers said something to me about these now quarter zips. I never knew they were quarter zips. All I knew they were sweaters that I could put on, and I would put these things on based upon the temperature, because I left an overcoat on the plane, and I try to do what I can to keep from looking around with overcoats. So I started wearing an extra layer for that purpose. And it all started at the Augusta National Golf Course. I was down there as somebody's guest, as you know, ain't no member. And so that particular day, the weather got pretty chilly. And I was not dressed. I needed another layer. So I went to the clubhouse, and there was this sweater there with the Augusta National logo, and it's blue and gray, and it was really, I liked the sweater. So I bought it to put on to stay warm. And it turned out it was a quarter zip. This was 10, 12 years ago, or maybe more. And so it worked so well on the golf course that day in keeping me warm. I started buying them. And I've got a bunch of them sleeveless and a bunch of them with sleeves. There's a sleeveless today, tomorrow I probably have on sleeves. And I just wear them all the time. And then the staff told me that there's a discussion going on the Hill about me and quarter zips. So I said, what the hell is a quarter zip? These sweaters that you wear. And so that's how I found out that I was wearing quarter zips. And so when Wes came out with this little thing, some video was out there. Zach in my office, who loves doing this, he decided he was going to put together a video. He found all these pictures of me with these quarter zips on. Now I don't think, two of them I don't think legit. I think he used AI or something for two of them. But most of them, the big one was with me at the State of the Union. With my chin in my hands, what I do a lot. In fact, a brother of mine said to me, he sent a friend of his came to see me about something. And so he went back to report. This was, some of you may remember David. David, the guy said, well, so I think I had a good meeting with the congressman. He said, oh yeah, what makes you think that? He said, well, he told him what he thought. He said, well, when he replied to you, did he put his elbow on the desk and his chin in his hand? He said, yeah, he did. He said, you both dead. He said, anytime he puts his elbow on the desk and his chin in his hand, he ain't approving of anything. And so that's the way I looked on that.
You did. Well, my 11 and 14-year-old sons will only, if I need them to dress up, they will wear a quarter zip. And when I showed them Zach's video, and I thought I saw Zach a second ago, they thought that was very cool.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was very cool.
I'm glad to know I'm being cool.
Okay. We have time for 2 questions, if anyone has a question. Oh, here's Diane.
Yes. Hey, my goodness, how you doing? One of my favorite people. Thank you. Thank you.
Particularly in this comment. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Staff. There are many here. I'm not going to name them except but
Thank you.
you are the epitome of leadership, and I thank you. And I know all of us thank you.
I thank you very much too. I can tell you, I spent an afternoon and better part of the evening with you over in Virginia last year when I came with it. I told Yebbet, I said, you know what? Spingarn is going to get elected governor. That was early in their campaign, and it was because of you, the time we spent together, the conversations, and what you were telling me what was going on. I said, Abigail Spingarn is going to be the next governor of Virginia. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Steve, Senator, just doing, can you stay a little bit longer? Sure, I can doors, but we'll say, well, was with Congressman James Clyburn, and I was like, oh, wow, that
Yeah.
You were incredibly instrumental in the 2020 election. And I know that was a tough time during the primary. What was the phone call like between Joe Biden and you that made that happen? Because Joe's in there because you were the person who put it there and helped him.
Well, all of that started in life. Emily, I talked about my mom and my dad, but we were married for 58 years, and we met as college students. And she was very astute. She didn't like, I think the whole time we were married, I think I got her in 2 public speeches the whole time. She said, I'll read it, you write it. But right after my annual fish fry, and I told her, she is down with diabetes for 30 years. And the diabetes was beginning to visit the whole, she had bypass surgery, stroke, bypass surgery. And she got a point oh, kidney failure. But her body would not take a regular dialysis. So she had to use something called peritoneal. And it was an overnight, all-night treatment. So I rushed home from the fish fry to tell her that I thought the fish fry was the most successful one we ever had. If you remember, there were 20 some odd people running. I think it was 23 running, 21 were at the fish fry. And the other 2 had real good excuses. So I went up and I told her, I said, I said, Emily, we had the most successful fish fry we ever had. I said, we're going to have a real problem, man. So because everybody expected me to endorse, and I don't know what we're going to do about this with all these people in the race. And about 5 of them are good friends of ours. So we're going to have a real problem. And she, sort of a deadpan way, said, I don't care how many people are running. I don't care how many are good friends of ours. If we want to win this race, we better nominate Joe Biden. And she said that to me. Now, this was like in April or May of 2019. She passed away in September. Interesting event. September is the 9th month. She died on the 9th month, the 19th day, at 9:01, 2019. I should be paying 9 numbers. She died at 9:01 during the 9th month on the 19th day in 2019.
That's why I asked.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. Well, she passed away, and of course, that means she wasn't around for the primary. And I've got 3 daughters, and as everybody will tell you, those girls mean almost everything to me. There's not a day that goes by. In fact, I was a little bit late coming in here because I was on the phone with Angelo, my youngest. I borrowed my Mignon, my oldest, I borrowed her frying pan last night. My frying pan is uneven. And
What did you make?
I was trying to cook bacon.
Okay.
So, I'm just, that's the way I interact with them. So I sat down with them and I told them, I said, no, we got a real problem here. I said, your mother told me that I need to endorse Joe Biden. Joe Biden has lost his races. Man, he came in 4th in Iowa, 5th in New Hampshire, and he came limping out of Nevada. I don't know what to do. She better listen to mama. Almost in unison. So we're going to listen to mama. And so that decision was really cooked up there. But I didn't know exactly how or when, except that on the day before that debate, or the weekend before that debate, when I went home that weekend, I got to my house and there was a note that our longtime accountant had passed away. And he and Emily were both suffering this similar ailment. And they would spend a lot of time on the phone with each other. His name was Jim White. And so when I looked at the note, his funeral is going to be the next day at 11 a.m. I got home on Thursday. The funeral's going to be Friday, and I'm headed on down to Charleston for the weekend for the debate. And I said, well, I can make this funeral. So the next morning, I got up, went to the funeral. I got there early. So I went down to pay my respects. Just walked down the center aisle of the church. And I got to the coffin and I said a little prayer and I turned to leave. And the lady was sitting on the far end of the front pew. And she did this to me. I'd never seen that lady before. I went over to her and she said to me, I need to ask you a question. And if you don't want anybody to hear your answer, you lean down and whisper it in my ear. I said, yes, ma'am. She asked me, who are you going to vote for in this primary? Remember, this is Friday, and the primary is going to be Saturday of the next week, 8 days away. And I told her, and she snapped her head back and she looked at me and she says, I needed to hear that. And the people in this community are waiting to hear from you. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I decided that I had to do something a little more dramatic. So I then called the guy who's kind of who I'm gonna be calling tonight because I got to do some robocalls for the kids tonight. I called Antoine Seawright. That's Antoine. When are you going to get to Charleston? They told me the next day. That's okay. Well, let's get together tomorrow. We need to write up some messages for robocalls. I want some messages for radio, and I want you to find some place for me to do this recording on next Monday. And then I want you to call Joe Biden's people and tell them I'd like to see him Sunday night. That we need to we need to talk Sunday night. And that's what led to all of it. So I never talked with Joe Biden. The only time I told him was that Sunday night before the debate, what I was going to do and what I thought he needed to do in order for the endorsement to have any real impact. And that's just history.
No. I want to echo everything that somebody on behalf of U.S. Historical Society and the city of South Carolina. Of course, everyone here today, we thank you for your service. And of course, most importantly, we thank you for the inspiration. So thank you for everyone for attending.
Thank you. Good.
Okay,